All right, welcome back to the Teacher's Desk. This is Hope and Lori, and this is the Teacher's Desk where we talk about things that are concerns to us and things that happen around the country. And the thoughts and opinions expressed in this forum are those of our opinions and not those opinions that are of our school systems and places where we work. And today we are talking about reflections of the first quarter. We did a lot of shows about in virtual learning over the summer and leading up to virtual learning and teachers aspects and students and parents and schools officials. So now we have had 1 quarter, 9 weeks of school done. Now, Lori and I are in different school systems, so my quarter just ended last week. We just started second quarter on Wednesday. What about you all, Lori?
Mine's ended on last Thursday, and we started on Friday.
Okay, so we are now into second quarter. So we just wanted to talk about some of those things that has happened over first quarter, some things that we're going to do differently second quarter, and maybe some things you can do as parents to help your kids second quarter to be a bit more successful than maybe they were first quarter. And let me just say, some kids really knocked it out the park first quarter. Some kids were really on it. They showed up in class on time. They turned in assignments. They asked questions. They sent emails when they needed to. So some kids, and that is always the case. Even as teachers, we know that it's going to be 1 or 2 kids in the class that all you have to do is show up. They're going to get to learn it on their own because they are just those type of people that's going to go out there. But we did have a significant number of kids that failed or were failing during the quarter. And maybe they pulled it up at the end, but the whole quarter was really hit and miss. And it was really a struggle. And I think that might be one of the reasons why so many school systems are rushing to return to in person is because of the number of failures that kids have and the parent pushback that a lot of that failing is due to the virtual learning. So let's just talk a little bit about maybe some of the pitfalls and some reasons why those kids were failing and see if it really is in fact virtual learning or is it a parenting issue? And or what are those things that we are doing as teachers that can combat some of the issues that have arisen during first quarter? So, Lori, what do you think are the main issues why your kids that failed first quarter? What were some of those main points?
So I don't really have a lot, but my two major ones, one was attendance. My second one was students not being able to use whatever the Zoom, not being able to get into Zoom or not being able to get into Google Classroom because they were not accustomed to using it. And they did not log on for the previous quarter, which was when or semester, I should say, when we were out in March. Attendance is my number one. My class, the class I teach is a support class. So pretty much you have to be in class in order to pass. Because I can't support you with your other classes if you don't come to me and with your work or even to complete my work, which is basically helping you become a better student. That's what I do. So I noticed that a lot of my students that were failing were students that they were absent for the entire time. I had a few students, we're in week 11, starting Monday. I had a few students that started showing up week 9. And I had more students show up last week. Okay. And I don't see my students every day. I see them like every other day, like 2 days out of the week. So that is a problem. So I had students show up and they were totally lost because they have missed 9 weeks of school or 10 weeks of school. And everyone else knew what to do. When I said, okay, let's go to Edpuzzle. Everybody else like, okay, they're navigating, going through. And these kids are like, well, how do I get there? What do I do? Like they didn't know simple things like, oh, go into Google Classroom, go into classwork. I'm telling them to go to class. How do I get there? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, so that was my major thing. with the attendance. I don't know, as far as addressing that to me, that's not something that I call. I did my calls. I send out calls. I did emails. But by the time I get to parent 2, I get so frustrated because the parent would be like, oh, I thought I see my child logging on in the morning. I didn't know. Wait a minute. You didn't know your child wasn't going to school for 9 weeks? I mean, that's basically how my reaction was. So then I was like, okay, I got a headache. I ain't calling no more parents today.
Right.
So that's my major. And the other thing, I think you even were going to touch a little bit on that, is as far as students not really being able to navigate on the internet, or not being able to get into Zoom, not understanding how to do the codes. And I think that's a training on our behalf, like, on teachers' behalf. So I don't know, how do you feel about that?
Well, I think that the attendance thing is maybe something that we don't have to deal with as much, because, of course, by me being science, I'm a core teacher, even though I see my kids every other day. Mm-hmm. So that is an issue. And so when
you don't see your kids every day? You don't see?
I don't see my kids every day. We have A day and B day.
Okay, so that's
So when we miss a class and the classes are shortened, then when we were in school, it's like,
you're missing a lot.
Like, what can I do to help you? The work is on Google Classroom, but
you're not going to understand how to do it
because you weren't in class. So
right.
And that's something that we would usually pull kids from lunch or elective class, or try to get them some other type of way throughout the day when they're. But it is an issue. So you're right. That is like a parent thing, and I feel like in some ways that's a double-edged sword, because I'm at work and I've had calls from the attendance office at my daughter's school saying that she missed class or was late for class. And I'm like, what do you mean she missed class? Like, what are you talking about? And here I'm a teacher at school doing so, it's kind of like I can also identify with those parents because I'm not right there. And even some of my kids, we've had issues where they might log on, but then they go black and we don't know if they're there. And we call the parents and they're like, but they in that room on.
Yeah, but okay, so I'm gonna cut you off right there. But you're talking about maybe 1 day or 2 days. I'm talking about 9 weeks. Or 10 weeks.
9 weeks.
I'm not talking about like maybe 1 day. I'm not even. You know what? I'm not even talking about like a week, because I could even say in the beginning, a lot of parents didn't know how to use Zoom. I had the parents back with that. A lot of them never used Zoom before. They never used Google Classroom, and I get that. Like, I understand it, and I'm sympathetic to it. But like after week 1 or week 2, I would be like, okay, we need to go down to the school. We need to do something. You cannot just sit here and not do anything.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you that 9 weeks is a parenting issue.
That's a long time.
You as a parent, because between sometime you should at least say, well, how's class going? Well, where are your grades? Well, let me see. Well, what about this class there? So that definitely is a parenting issue, although I identify that it's a struggle for those of us that are working.
Yeah.
So those people to really kind of keep an eye on both you and your kids. So we as teachers are sympathetic to that. I think that in many ways I had a lot of failures for technology issues, like you said. Kids not knowing how to turn things in on Google Classroom. So when I go in and grade it, it's blank, it's not there. They're frustrated because they like, I did the assignment and I turned it in and you still give me a 0. The parent is frustrated because they like, I did the assignment with them and I know that they did it. So in some ways that I've had to combat that is getting on Zoom with kids, having those personal conversations and saying, share your screen, let me show you what to click on. It has helped in many regards of kids that, they don't realize that if they open up a document, don't go back to Google Classroom because you opening up a blank document. Go to your Google Drive and open it from there, because that's the one that you use, because they think, well, I went back and all my answers were erased.
Yeah, they don't understand.
They don't understand opening up a new document.
I get that.
So those few things, has been a help, and that has combated some of them. some kids are still trying to work the system, just click and turn in, knowing that they don't have anything.
Didn't do anything. No work.
The more we contact the parents and say, well, this is happening, and they challenge the kids, then some of those kids will crack and be like, no, I didn't do it. When I say, well, show me this assignment, show me that assignment, show me this, then they're like, oh, I didn't do that. Oh, I didn't. So eventually they do get back in and say, you didn't do everything. You might have done one or two things, but you didn't do everything. So, get on it or you will get caught in your lie. So that has woken, some kids up. And just the fact that some kids didn't really take it seriously. They thought just showing up to Zoom was enough. They didn't think they had to.
Yeah, I have that here. That's it.
Yeah, where do I find this assignment? Send me on my some of those kids we had to just get to realize that this is not a game.
Yeah.
We serious. You need to do this work and it needs to get in. I think that kids didn't have a sense of urgency. We give them a deadline and say it's due. They turn it in. Maybe
they feel like it.
Maybe when you put the 0 in, then all of a sudden now I'm going to do it because I see that I got these zeros. And now I'm frustrated with the teacher because I've done an assignment. You haven't changed the grade. And so those pitfalls have been some of the struggles. And it's so much more difficult to grade virtually than it is in person. And I don't think that parents and students really realize, because if you give me a paper to something that you missed, I can go through and check that off and put that in a grade book in no time. But if you turn in 3 or 4 missing assignments, that might take me 30 minutes just to get through each of them, open it up, make sure you did it, grade it, and then get those in.
Yeah.
And so if you have 12 or 14 kids that are doing that, it could be it could be difficult.
And I don't know if your system does this, but our system does not work compatible. It's not compatible with Google Classroom. So what I mean when I say that, like when I do grades in Google Classroom, the student, for those of you who don't know how Google Classroom works, okay, I put a document out with something that the students have to complete, and I have to grade it on Google Classroom. So when I grade it, the grade goes into Google Classroom in a grade book, and electronic grade book. But that grade book doesn't transfer to our grading system, so that means that I have to take that information from Google Classroom and put it into our grade book. Manually. There is a teacher in my school that kind of figured out how to cut and paste, make a spreadsheet, but it's just so much work. So I don't know. Does your system, does it transfer like that?
No, it's not. I was just I don't grade things in Google Classroom. I retrieve them to look at them to grade, but I don't put the grade in Google
Classroom. We have to.
Oh, you have to. Okay.
We're doing double. So we're actually doing double. Y'all
are doing double.
Yeah.
Now, in some regards, I think especially initially, parents felt like everything was going to be in Google Classroom. So they're like, it's not this. And I'm like, I'm not grading in Google Classroom.
Ours is.
You got to have Power School. So I guess they're doing that so their parents can have access to it right there. But like you said, it doesn't translate to the system.
It
one more thing that teachers have to do. Yeah.
That's something we need to write Google about.
That's right.
It would be perfect because everything else. So when I use Nearpod goes directly into Google Classroom. All I got to do is import.
Right.
Everything goes directly. So if we can get Google Classroom to do the same exact thing with the form we use for grading, that would make
Google, Alexa, please tell Google to upload.
Yes. Work out with
the Power School. Right. Maybe we need to ask Alexa or Siri or something because that would be awesome.
It would be.
I was thinking the other day, I was like, I just need to invent an interface where we could just upload, it could just make things so much easier.
And that would be easy because then the students would get immediate feedback. Because the reason why we use Google Classroom is because the kids will get immediate feedback, which I do like, because the kids will be like, oh, I didn't do well. Can I do it over? Or whatever. Or, I got a 0. Okay, can I resubmit it? So that's what I do like about it. And it also gives them an average. You can give them an average so they can kind of have an idea without looking onto our actual grading system that we use.
Yeah. Well, we are pretty much big in our school on Power School. So the parents have the app, the kids have the app. So when you put a grade, it comes up. I'm getting emails before I even hit save. The parents like, I see they got a 0. What is this? Grading. So and teachers, kids do the same thing. They are always on their Power School, always looking. What is this? What is this 0? So that is a feather in their cap, I can say. But one of the ways, hopefully, that has helped out this semester. I can see we've only done one assignment, but I can see that more kids had that assignment turned in after class. I think that's that's something that can be said for us being able to do that. Now, I still had a couple kids whose assignment was blank when I went in there. That I felt like I know they were doing it because they were answering questions, but again, uploading the wrong thing. Now that I've had a quarter with them, I've had more of a basis to say, oh, this child right here usually does their work. They must have uploaded the wrong thing versus what I did in the beginning when I'm like, oh, I don't know. They might be playing games. They might just, So I'm able to say, hey, Jan, where's your assignment? You usually, I know that you answer those questions and they say, oh, I did it. So just being able to, and some of them kids might never get it. But maybe they feel more comfortable now saying, hey, can we Zoom so I can show you my assignment because I wasn't able to put it on Google Classroom. Then maybe they didn't feel comfortable doing it at the beginning. So I would like to stay with virtual learning because I feel like instead of running and saying, oh, this not working, too many kids are failing because they need to be in person, let's go through what didn't work, try to find ways to fix those, and say, okay, let's give it, because kids are learning.
They're learning.
They are learning. They are really learning. I mean, I think one of the big issues I thought was that kids were going to cheat on tests and quizzes.
Oh, no.
And these kids, the grades they're getting, they can't be cheating with these grades. But some of them are decent grades. Like, they're really learning. They're getting it. So we cannot say that kids are not learning. We can say that parents are frustrated because they see all of these 0s and they think that their kids are doing work and the kids are saying they're doing work and sometimes they are doing work. I can see that's frustrating for them. But it would be nothing short of a kid losing a paper in their notebook and saying they know they did the assignment and the teacher saying, well, you never turned it in, or you not writing your name on your paper. And you said, I know I turned it in. Why do I have a 0? And I have a paper with no name on it. So all of these frustrations will still come, and it's not distance learning's fault that these kids are failing.
I just want to touch on the part that what you said about parents feeling like their kids are not learning. You know what? I fail to disagree. If their child is coming to school, their child is learning so many skills that they did not have last year. I'm gonna tell you, at least I can say as far as in our school or in my classroom, I should say, a lot of things that I did not use last year, I'm using this year. And when you said about your children sharing the screen, I mean, I have students that practically can take over my classroom and share the screen and tell. I had a new student come in, like, remember I was telling you about the students that were rolling in week 9 and week 10. And I was like, well, I don't even know where to start. And I said, you know what? I told my students, why don't you guys explain to them and tell them what assignments they should do if they want to get quick assignments done. And I had a student that took over and kind of was like, okay, let me can I share my screen? I said, go ahead. Right. And I gave her the permission. Okay, because you have to give them permission. You can't. They'll take it over when they start throwing stuff up. Right. So I gave her permission and she went through and she navigated and showed the kids and I was just like, wow, could that child do that maybe a few months ago? No. Right. That is learned behavior. That is something learned behavior. That's something that a child will learn.
And that's a confidence that is going to allow them to put that into other things. And if I could do this, let me go and find these other resources that are going to help me.
And when they go to college, that will if they plan to go to college, that will help them a lot, because you do have a lot of online schooling when you are in school, when you're in college.
That's right.
So I think it will only do nothing but help them.
It will do nothing but help. And some of those kids who are used to having people hold their hands have been able to really be held accountable and do some things on their own. And we watched the video in class the other day, and I'm always the type that stop storing the videos, go over the answers, who didn't get it, let's go back through who needs it. I'm doing everything to make sure you have it.
Right.
So at the end of class, if I say, well, if anybody didn't get one, stay back and I'll get you caught up, because you can always miss one while you try to. Now, if you tell me you need numbers 3 through 12, it's a problem. Like, we are actually doing this in class. This isn't even homework. That's
right.
Like, this is in class. What were you doing? And I had a lot of those situations where some of the things you were missing were things we did in class. What were you doing when we were doing assignment? So one of the things that I've learned is to now, when I'm doing videos, to put the link to the video at the top of the sheet. So now you don't need me to watch the video. So I'm like, well, if you need that many, the link is at the top. Go back and rewatch the video and get the ones that you need. I will help you with 1 or 2, but I'm not going to sit here and give you 8 answers.
Right.
You will have several chances during class to listen and get them and do on your own. So I think that we are learning strategies of things that we can do to make it easier. You know, if a parent says, well, they missing these video questions, but we don't see the video. Can you send us the video? This don't. Now, you know what? The link is at the top of the sheet.
Right.
These questions, go back to the link and get it. So now you can't find something in Google Classroom. Oh, it's by topic. Look under this topic, under this one, and you go in there and find it. You know, so we are being able to troubleshoot a lot of the concerns that we had at the beginning of virtual learning going into second quarter, to hopefully be able to see fewer kids that are failing throughout the quarter. I think that at some point over the quarter, I had like 80 some kids that were failing. And I ended up with maybe 6 kids. Now, some had 3 average, which means they did nothing. They did nothing over the quarter.
That's
and
cool.
We had some kids like that. But once again, I feel like that's a parenting issue.
Yeah.
If in 9 weeks your kid hasn't done that one level work, and this was in all
the attendance for 9 weeks.
At what point would they be doing that during school? Because at what point are you asking, what are your grades? What are you doing?
Right.
You know, how's school going? And they're able to tell you, oh, I'm doing fine. I'm doing all my work. And you haven't followed up and looked at stuff and said, well, where are these F's coming from? Let me reach out to the teacher since you said you're doing all your work. So
I think another thing might be, let me ask you a question. So how did you all have progress report and then you have report card? How does it go? Yeah. So how did you guys distribute your progress report? Was it electronic or was it?
It was electronically. Parents were able to log on to their PowerSchool, which again we use faithfully, and see the progress. And we had a deadline that things needed to be in.
Okay, because I think that even if your child wasn't going to school for the first 4 weeks or 5 weeks, right? By the time you get to progress reports, you should see as a parent that your child is not doing what they're supposed to, even if you're not allowed to check. Like, say you are working. I do, because I'm working too, and I have kids too, so I understand. But when you get to that midpoint and you see, wait a minute, you have all these failing grades going straight down. What is going on? That's the time when you can actually catch it and you can make a turnaround. And obviously, by what you just said, you said you had like 80 people failing, and then you only had 6 at the end, shows that by that midpoint, maybe somewhere, because we are going through a pandemic. So everyone is going through stuff, parents, students, teachers, administrators, everyone. So there are going to be times we're going to slip that we probably don't know. Right. Okay. But my thing is that once we do look at the progress report, we stick to those dates, try to find out what those dates are as parents. We can probably catch it before it's too late.
I think a lot of our parents were on it. I think I can speak for myself, but I know that several of us teachers were constantly calling parents, emailing parents, emailing teachers, emailing students, saying you need this assignment, this assignment, this, and that helped having those Zoom conferences with those kids. So it just went into a lot of building relationships with parents. And a lot of times parents were sending those nasty emails about why do you do this to my kid and why is this and that. And I just heard the frustration. I didn't even take it personally. I'm like, oh, they just frustrated because don't know what's going on. So let me call
It's
them.
very frustrating.
Oh yeah, and a lot of times, by the end, the parent was, "Oh, thank you. I'm so glad that you called."
Right.
Because they see that they were misinterpreting, or they were just frustrated, or it wasn't what they thought. So I feel like the relationships and bonds that we've made during first quarter will help us in second quarter.
Of course, definitely.
So if you see they fail in my class, you like, wait a minute, you need to get on Dr. Wilson's work, because it's a 0. She'll let you make that up. Like that means that you're missing it. And it's not like, oh my goodness, how do they have all these zeros? And I'm like, let's start with the basics. You turn your assignment in, you get a grade. You don't turn it in, you get a 0. So it's just I'm looking forward to the positive outcome of second quarter. I still have some anxiety about the return to school. It's just in that we don't know when it's going to happen. So as soon as we start to get comfortable and get in the groove and have everything flowing, it very well could be that they say, well, next week we're going back to school. And then, we back to the drawing board all over again. But as for now, I am hopefully optimistic that this second quarter is going to be stronger than first quarter, because a lot of us have gotten in the groove, and I'm actually beginning to appreciate some of the finer points of virtual learning.
Yeah, me too.
And that we have some flexibility in where we are, that we did take away the discipline for the most part.
Oh yeah, that's true.
The kids are muted. I'm not saying turn around, be
quiet. I haven't said be quiet at all.
Now the disengagement is on you and not the teacher. Before it was like, oh, kids are not engaged. What are you doing as a teacher to get them engaged? Get them engaged. Now it's like they were watching TV. I didn't know they were watching TV. They were looking at me. It's not my fault now that they are not engaged. So,
well,
go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I was just going to say, you said something about the kids being disengaged, and it's not our fault if they're not engaged in the lesson or whatever. But what I wanted to mention is something that I did reflect on, that I said I'm going to start doing. I started it last week. The check-in for my students and having them chat for the first few minutes in class. Like, when I say chat, in a chat, like it's all structured chat too. It's right. Turn it, because what I do is there's a way you can, for those who are listening and don't understand what I'm talking about, you can turn the chat that they can only talk to you with the teacher, the host, or they can talk to each other and everyone can see. So I always have it on me, because I don't want anybody talking while I'm teaching. Right. So I'll unlock it so that in the beginning that they can chat. So what I've noticed is that kids are coming early. So they're like, oh, how you doing, Miss Colden? Because they know once they say that, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm fine. Okay, I'm going to unlock the chat so you guys can chat for 2 minutes. And within that time, I did it last week. And I mean, a positive and a negative was that a student told me it was her birthday. And I was like, wow, if we were in class, I would recognize it, or, and then I had another student tell me that her uncle died of COVID. And so I didn't know this happened. Now, this is what happened was I unlocked the chat and I said, okay, guys, you talk while I pull up my, and we wait for a couple more students to come. And the student was like, I said, okay, tell me how you feeling. Check-in time for Miss Colden. So they checked in. I said, I'm going to tell you how I'm feeling. So I was like, I'm feeling real tired. I always set it off and then everybody starts saying how they feeling. And so she was saying, she must have said, well, I feel sad because my uncle passed away or whatever. And the kids were all, even though they don't know each other, they like really know each other, like how they would in a classroom. They were all like, oh, I'm so sorry. And I was like, what are they writing? Because I kept saying, well, what are they sorry about? So I unmuted. I said, guys, what are you sorry about? And then when I read, one of the students unmuted and said, Miss Colden, such and such said they lost their uncle yesterday because of COVID. I was like, oh my goodness. And I didn't know. And I said, okay, well, we're sympathetic, but it was, and she said, thank you guys. That makes me feel so special. And I was like, this is what I'm talking about right here. Like we finally got to this point because it actually took us 10 weeks to get to this point when usually it takes us maybe 2 or 3 weeks. Because by week three, the student, you're like, okay, you sit over here because you talk to, you do this, you do not the papers, you want to walk around, your students around. And I feel like now it's like 2.5 months later that I'm getting to know my students.
Yeah.
And it feels weird to me, but it also felt good. So on a positive note, I'm glad that I'm finally able to make that connection with my students. How do you feel about that?
I think I feel the same way because I think that I do have some kids that's on there that are just every time they get on, good morning, how you doing?
Right.
You know, they you can tell that you can always already tell some of their personalities and how they are. And it is difficult to build that sense of community when they are not around each other all the time. But you are able to keep through chat, and sometimes things are going on and we are playing a Kahoot or Quiz or watching a video and the kid will put in the chat, oh, I had one of those, or oh, that looked nasty. That, you know, type of thing. So you are right in that it has taken me longer to kind of build that sense of community. But I do think that we are getting there.
Yes, we are.
Yes, I am pleased with that. I am very pleased with that.
Yeah. So it's not all negative. We do have positive.
Yes, we do have some positive reviews.
A lot.
We will continue the conversation about what teachers are doing to build that sense of community and to build the relationships that we are missing due to COVID and COVID shutdown. So we want to thank you for tuning in with us on this episode of The Teacher's Desk. Please remember to like our Facebook, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and thank you for tuning in.
Have a good day.
Have a good day. Bye.